everybody, welcome to Houdini Hangout. We are halfway through July. It's the 19th of July. And here we are, another stream. Wasn't able to stream last week. Was up doing some meetings up in Toronto, which was a lot of fun. Got to see some cool people. But yeah, it was we're back this week, and I decided to do things. I'll go back to maybe the basics of how I've been, doing this stream overall. I've been doing a lot of content this year that's been, a little bit more teaching focused and training, focused. And I think I'm just tonight we're gonna do something a little bit more laid back and chill. It's not gonna really have too much of a too much of a schedule or anything like that. We're just going to kind of walk through a little project and one that was suggested on the Discord. I haven't gotten to many of those this year because we've been focusing on a whole bunch of different stuff with Vex and some USD stuff and then Vellum. And so we've kind of been all over the place as far as different learning kind of paths go. But tonight I was thinking we do something a little bit more, just a little bit more project focused and not so much on learning some specific topic or anything like that. So that's the idea for this evening, and that's where we're going to go with this. And so hopefully that is of interest to you, and you'll find this helpful on some level. I know I actually got a decent bit of feedback on some social, I think on Twitter and stuff like that. But so it seemed like people were interested in it and thought it was an interesting idea. I'm just gonna pull up the little clip that I have here from of what we're gonna do this evening. I guess I can just switch over to here real quick. And so this is kind of a little image of like a little video of what was posted on the Discord server, and I think it's pretty interesting, concept and interesting video. And we're not going to obviously get to this level of render in a couple of hours. That's just not realistic. However, I think we can hit some of the major points here. Now, obviously, this is being driven by flip simulation. You can see that there's a very, high viscosity fluid sim that's at the base of this. We've got some collision going on there. And then what I think is the most interesting little bit of it is is all these little grass pieces that are kind of embedded in this fluid. So we'll play around with this a little bit and kind of see where we want to go with it. There's a few different options that we could certainly use in order to, make this work or whatever, make this kind of however we might want it to go. I've kind of tossed around some ideas with how to orient those little grass particles, and we'll give that a shot. Hopefully I can make sense of it. I think I've got some ideas using the surface field, but we'll see. Maybe I'll miss the mark on that one. I don't know, but we'll give it a shot and kind of see where we can go. But yeah, that's the general gist of what we're going to be looking at here. I'm gonna send that back to the tab there. Cool. So that's what we're going to be looking at here. So thanks to the Dot for suggesting us take a look at this. There was some other kind of cool things in the stream. A lot of them were Vellum related, so I kind of figured, well, we've done a lot of Vellum stuff, so maybe we'll move on to something a little bit different and do some flip based things. So that's what we're going to do this evening, and I think it should be pretty interesting. Hopefully we'll get a good result at the end of it. Obviously I'm not going to be modeling grass or anything like that. But Yeah, that's what we'll aim for this evening. I'll probably keep bringing that little image up from time to time. Oh, I should also say that this is, oh God, I'm not going to be able to say his name well. Simon Rayher. Silly American, I can't say people's names. But I tried to link him in on Twitter or wherever I was posting about it, just so that I give him credit for this thing that we're reverse engineering. So yeah, really cool piece by him, and huge congrats and props for doing this piece. I think it's pretty cool. So anyways, that's where we're going to be aiming for this evening. I should give my little usual spiel here that if you have any thoughts or comments or questions or anything like that, please feel free to drop it in the chat. If you just want to say hi, you can drop that in the chat as well. If you have questions about something that I'm doing or thoughts of how to do something better, please put those in the comments and the chat, wherever you might want to just comment, whether you're watching this live or after the fact. Happy to talk about why I'm doing something some way, or try to come up with better ways to do things, based on your suggestions and stuff like that. So that, please feel free to kind of speak up and let me know what you might be thinking or ways that we can do things better. So I'm not the only person here that knows Houdini. So I expect that plenty of people will have better ways of doing things, and I certainly don't know it all. So happy to hear from all of you in that regard. So let me I'm just starting up a file here, and we'll get going. Cool. All right. Well, we're going to be making some liquid and some grass, and let's do some Houdini stuff, and we'll jump over and start doing that. All right. So, let me just actually pull this up one more time, and we can just take a look at maybe the end result here. Probably a good enough thing to grab. So, all right. So we have a couple of rocks here. We've got some liquid kind of dripping off of them and pooling. Obviously a very high viscosity fluid. You can see based on the puddles that it's making at the bottom there. That's always kind of a dead giveaway for, a high viscosity. It's not just slow fluid, but it is actually really viscous because it's kind of pooling in this circular pattern. So we'll do that. Actually, I'm curious to see how he starts this. Yeah, interesting. So we're not really seeing this from the very, very get-go, which is probably just a little spherical emitter up at the top there. So yeah, let's start this off. We'll get some rocks built, and we'll get some flowing liquids coming down here. So, all right, let's do geometry here. This we'll just call, I think, rocks. I'm going to kind of color these based on what they are. So this is going to be our geometry stream here, or a geometry object. Not a simulation per se, but we're creating geometry. So I like to color those based on, different things like that. If I have a sim, I usually put it in purple, just random things like that. I think it's nice to get a bit of a shorthand for yourself to kind of know, what it is, that you're working on, and kind of get some sense of, where, what colors are what types of things, that type of an idea. All right. So let's do something like, I don't know, maybe we'll do 15 here. I'm going to grab the mountain sop, even though this is now an attribute noise sop. It is kind of, it is still, the mountain sop at heart, but it's, obviously now it's an attribute noise SOP, and it's based on the normal vector. So the noise is going along our normals. But let's just see here. We'll just kind of randomly choose one. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll just kind of flip around until we see one that looks nice. Hey, that looks pretty cool. Could have some fluid going from up here maybe. Cool. All right, so that'll be our top rock. So let's do a transform here. And then we can actually just do the same thing, start with the same sphere. Let's pull this up a bit. So let's do something like such here. I have a feeling it's going to drip off of this side. So let's kind of do one of these. Rotate it around, something like that. Cool. All right, we'll have that there for right now. Then we'll grab another one of these. Excuse me. I don't know. We'll just grab a different random seed here somewhere. Something like that maybe. Cool. And then let's grab another transform here. And I'm just going to reset the translate and rotate. And let's merge these back together. So one really interesting thing that I actually just learned recently, which maybe I'm ashamed to say this, but there's actually two different types of template flags, and I did not realize this. So this is your standard template flag where you just click on this once and you get this kind of, this view here where it's kind of like a wireframe, and you can see the other object like that. Now there is another version of this, and if you do control click, that's a totally different template flag, and it's like solid now actually. So shame on me for not knowing that, but it's kind of really neat because what you can do now is you could template this, for example. Actually, I'll turn, let's see here. So unfortunately it's a little weird to get going, but if I template this last thing here and I come back up to this view state, I still have easily have my handle, but everything is still like solid, and I can still sort of look at it as if it's like, solid geometry. And so I kind of like that a little bit better. Been doing some learning in other aspects of Houdini, and it's just been kind of nice to have that. So I think we're probably going to end up something like that there. Maybe I'll just scale this one up just a little bit, since it's going to maybe hit this and then drip down. We'll kind of see where we go from there, but something like that should be cool. All right, great. So we've got a couple of rocks here, and then we can go down here. Yeah, I don't really know if we need anything too fancy here. Well, we'll see where we get with this. So let's just do a null, and we'll just call this out. Okay, cool. So we've got our output here. These are going to be our rocks. We're going to emit from up on top of this one here. Cool. So let's do another geometry node, and this we'll call, maybe we'll just say flip sim, something like that. Cool. So I'm not going to do the flip in SOPs as much as I probably should do it that way. I just really am not super comfortable with that workflow yet for whatever reason. I haven't had a reason to use it too heavily. So I have to personally do some learning in that regard and figure out that a bit more. But so we'll just do it. We'll basically just do a DOP network in here and go from there. All right, so let's do an object merge here. And we'll grab our rocks. So these are going to be our colliders. We're going to say get rocks. And then let's also, all right, let's do a blast node here. And let's do this primitives, and we'll select, just control clicking on that. We're going to select some. I'm going to use the brush here and make sure I'm not selecting them on the other side. And we'll probably just grab some up at the very top here. We'll just kind of brush some of these on like that. Should be cool. Yeah, sure. And we'll delete the non-selected there. So that's where we're going to kind of source this geometry from up top there. What we can do is, let's see here. We could just do oops. Let's do like a labs thicken. I think that's what we can do up here. And actually, so what we're going to do is, so here's our flip dop source. And now in this case, we could source from this, and this will create our source geometry. What we actually are going to want to do is probably extrude this up. So let's do it that way. So let's do a peak, and then we'll just push us up kind of in this direction here. So we'll just peak it upwards a little bit like this. And what we can do is do 0.1, something like that. And then we'll copy this parameter. We'll put this into the depth, paste relative reference. And now we have like, this will be all tied together here. So if we have our thicken and then our flip source, this is going to source from up there. So then anything that we do here, if we reduce this, let's just say down a little bit, we're going to get our thicken is going to change. So these are going to be kind of linked together. So we can take this and adjust it based on, how we have this source geometry here. And it should more or less be right. So let's do, I don't know, we'll do maybe 0.04. That'll be a nice little bit of fluid to add to the top there. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I didn't see your messages in the chat there. Hi, Zach. Hello, Twelios, whatever. Welcome. Hi. Glad to have you guys. Hope you're having a great day, evening, night, morning, whatever it might be where you are. So based on the changes to flip, if we do type in, oops, my keyboard feels like it's far away. If we type in flip now, you can see obviously we have our SOP based flip stuff here. And so now we have our flip dop source, which is, hey, Sebastian, welcome. So now we have our flip dop source. That's the one that we're going to use for bringing things into dops. So we've got our flip source there. That's looking good. We've got, things like voxel size and particle separation. We can play around with those in a little bit, but yeah, I think we'll be good here. So let's do that. That looks good. Let's also, all right, so this is we're just going to do a null here again, and we'll say emitter. I like to color things in the middle of my networks yellow for whatever reason. And then this here, I'm just going to say colliders. It's going to go into our rocks. So our rocks are our colliders. This is our emitter. And then we can do a dop network here. And I'm just going to put the emitter in 1, this in 2. Now that's not going to specifically link to anything, right? We're just basically giving ourselves a way to kind of reference this more easily within our dop network. So we're going to need a few things here. We'll need a flip object. We'll need a flip, all right, typo, flip solver. So our flip object will go into our flip solver. We need a gravity force. That would be good. Need something like that. We'll wire those through. We need hey, Chris, welcome to the stream. And hello. Let's see. So we need a source here. So we need a, I guess it's a volume source here, right? Yeah. They've changed some of these around on me a little bit here, but we're going to initialize this. We can do source flip or sync flip. We're going to do source. So we'll do that. So we'll say, flip source. So here's our flip object. There is our, so I'm going to get rid of this. We're not going to have an initial SOP path for this, so we'll get rid of that. I guess we could just change this type to like particle field or, something like that. But yeah, that's fine. We can do that. So we're going to want to add a viscosity attribute to this anyways, as I'm kind of controlling things here, setting them up. Remember when you're working in DOPS that this is your object. This is where all your data is going to live, right? So if we look down here, kind of behind my head, I'll duck out of the way a little bit. If we look down here, we're going to see that these are where all of our different fields, geometry, things like that are going to live on this object here. So this is kind of the container for all of our data here, this flip object. This is where that data is getting sourced from. It's coming from this volume source here, which I've named flip source, and I've initialized this to be a source flip. That's pro stuff. No, this is I mean, yeah, this is how we all had to do it. I mean, until there was SOP based flips, this is all the normal. So hopefully it'll just give you a little glimpse into that. Hopefully this doesn't feel too overwhelming, but we'll do a little bit of DOPS and we'll get hopefully some nice results. We all make our flip sims one leg at a time. Yes, exactly. We all put them on one leg at a time. Okay, cool. So we've got our flip source, we've got our flip object. Let's set up our flip source to start grabbing from that first context geometry right here. So again, our first context geometry just basically means that we're going to be sourcing in this emitter data right here. So this obviously is way too big right now. So we're going to reduce the size of this a little bit. I'm going to reduce the size of this area here. So you can see that our volume is gigantic. So let's go into our flip solver here and we can kind of adjust this a little bit. You can go to your volume motion and adjust things there. You can see right here our box size is quite large. So let's just bring that down a little bit to maybe, I don't know, 10 by 10. I think that should be more than enough. We can just kind of raise this up a little bit. Sure, looks good. There's our two rocks. Yeah, we don't even need it to be, 3 by 3 maybe? No, 5 by 5 would probably be more than fine. But cool. All right, great. All looking good. Our flip source right here. We've got our source. We're getting it from the surface. It's going to go in the target field surface, and that looks right. That all looks good. Let's also do a merge here, and we'll just merge here, and I'm going to do a static object. I'm going to hit Shift R to switch those inputs, and let's just grab our SOP path here. And what we can do is we can do a handy dandy op input path, which is a really nice little expression. And what we can do is we can say, one dot would be the input coming into this node, but if we want to go one node up, we can do 2 dots. So we do quotes, ... and then do 1 for the second input. And there's our rocks coming in. This just makes it, I think, a little bit easier to reference it, because basically anywhere that you want that path to come in, you can just put in op input path, quote ... and 1, and you'll get your colliders. So it's kind of nice. The only thing that we need, though, is we need to set up our collider. So I think, here we go. Here's our collision source. So let's do that. And I think this might be better to do anyways, because we're going to do a collision volume here. So why don't we say this, and then we can grab our colliders, and then this could be VDB, because we're going to use our VDBs for for referencing how we want this collision to work. So let's go in here. We're going to change this to a volume sample, and our proxy volume is right here. So we can do the same thing. We can say paste that, go it 2. And so now we're going to get our colliders VDB there. We can change this to by size and link that. So we'll copy this parameter. We'll come up here and paste this relative reference. So now we've got those two linked there. So we've got this static object division size linked. We can turn off the display geometry. We can turn on our collision guide. And now as we adjust these here, we can change our division size. And that is going to change our collider resolution. All right, so we have a 0.01. And what you should be able to see here is that these collision meshes should get a bit nicer here as we reduce them in size. So maybe something like that'll be fine. It might be a little high. Maybe we'll do, yeah, something like that. Should be good. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. So we've got our colliders in here now. Cool. All right, so let's see here. Why are we not getting our... Okay, we're sourcing our particles. We must just not have a high and a low enough resolution here to get any particles. So let's adjust that a little bit. So what I'm going to do is, let's see here. I don't think we have any particles there. We just have 1 point, no particles. Yep. So let's reduce this a little here. There we go. It looks like we're starting to get some particles. And we can also reduce the voxel size here to make sure we're getting something. Cool. So let's do something like that. How many particles are we getting there? Yeah, not too many. All right, so we'll do something like that. And that. Let me just see where we're going here. Yep. Okay, so one thing we're getting is that these particles are not showing they're showing up as gigantic spheres, which we don't want. So if we go to guides and go to particles, we should be able to change this to particles. There we go. What it was set to was spheres, I think. No, it was set to sprites. So those were huge. All right, so let's just change this to particles. There are our particles coming in off the top. And let's just hit play and see what happens here. Nope. What's going on? Reduce the size of this first of all. Not that it really matters in this case. Okay, why is that doing that? They might be. They might be going inside the rock. That's a good point. Let me just do that. No. Is the source being linked? Source being linked. I'm not sure what you even mean by that. Interesting. I didn't think this was going to be something. Oh, okay. No problem. No problem. Let's see here. Very odd. I don't know why that's... Did I miss something here? If you delete the particles in source, just to test it. I see. Like this here. Yeah, that's... Huh. It's very odd. I don't know why it's doing that. Welp. Let's just do something a little different here. Since we don't need to do this, let's see. We'll just do that and see. All right. That's all right. Let's just get around this real quick. I'm just going to take that emitter geometry and just say flip emitter. Check if this source. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Should be, but yeah, let me actually look at that. This should be. Let me hide this. I mean, I did just do this kind of quick, but it should be fine. Let's see here. Yeah, that all seems fine. Let's just see here. We'll just do this. We'll just say emit. All right, cool. Let's just grab this and cool. So there's our flip fluid object. Let me just see. I don't think I didn't mess anything up here. Surface. No, it's all fine. Oh, I wonder if it's my... Oh, I bet you I wonder if that's it. I wonder if my particle separation and all this stuff is too low. Bet you it is. I bet you what it is. Let me just get rid of this for a second. Just going to copy these back and forth. That's probably what it is. These are not linked. It's just way too big of a resolution. Let's see here. Voxel size. Yeah, you definitely can merge more than one inside of there for sure. All right, let's see if this does it. This might do it. Hopefully it does, because that was silliness. Yeah, there we go. I was going to say, this is just ridiculous. It should work. So the problem was, stupidly, not thinking about this. So what the issue was that I just was going so quick, I didn't link my particles separation. So the particle separation was just so big that it wasn't doing anything, basically. So now it is, and we should be all good here. All right, so let's see here. Yeah, fluid. Okay, so we don't maybe quite need that much. So let's do 0.15 for now, maybe. Just something low resolution. I'm also going to do a jitter seed here. $F, just to jitter it per frame. I think we want to do that so that it's not all the same. The other thing I'm kind of curious about here is if they added anything else here. Okay, yep. Voxel size. Yeah, that's exactly right. What I was doing stupidly was I wasn't linking my I wasn't linking those together. So in order to get these to match up properly, you want to have this particle separation match up to the one that's out out in SOPs. Now you could technically do this like, I don't know, if we divided this by 2, this will actually have a lower, so now we have a higher particle separation, or like a smaller amount of separation within the DOP network. So it's actually resampling it based on this reseeding value here. So it's trying to get 8 particles per voxel. So what it'll do is at the first few steps, it'll be really low. And then as it starts to kind of get a little bit further into the sim, you'll see that it actually gets more points. So for sure you want to have them match together. I just divided it by 2 here. So we'll set it back for right now. So, yeah, exactly. And part of the problem was here too, is that just thinking about the particle separation and the grid scale and things like that, when you have such a low particle separation, this grid scale here is actually going to be the size, basically, of there's voxels, right, that are getting created here, right? There's not only do you have, if I hit play here a little bit, I'm not sure if it'll show here. Yeah. So not only do I have geometry that's 8,000 points, I also have a whole bunch of different fields that have 111,000 voxels in it. Now, if I go back to that particle separation I had before, I'll just go back to where I was and start simming this and just let this kind of move forward a couple frames here. What you're going to see is that I have 1,300 points, but I only have a flip. These voxels are only 11 by 10 by 12. So they're these huge boxes, these huge voxels. So that's what's causing part of the problem, because these are all linked together here, right? So you want those all to kind of be in the right frame, scale kind of, so that the particles are enough to be in those voxels and kind of fill up your sim properly. Now we're in a good spot. It's going to flow well and all that stuff's good. All right. So now we can add viscosity. That will be good. Let's see here. Don't need anything else here. Another thing too, just to keep in mind, is that we actually get this surface field here as well. So this is kind of a rough and ready surface visualization, right? So you can see here. Oh, cool. Yeah, no problem, Zach. I know some of this stuff can be a little much. It can take a little bit of time to get the idea for it. I just want to see what this is going to do here. Okay, cool. So what we have here coming is this is actually our surface field. And what you'll see is that as we go further and further with this, so if we took this to, let's just say 0.1 and simmed this, you're going to see a much finer resolution surface field coming, right? So the reason for this is it's because these are all tied together, the voxel, this is a voxel grid, right? That's defining the surface. It's an SDF. And so as we change the particle separation, so too will the resolution of this VDB change, along with it. The advantage in using a flip source instead of a point from volume. Yeah, what the difference there is going to be, it's a good question. So the flip source is going to specifically give you some of those attributes, right? So we could also oversample at the boundaries and things like that. But what it's doing here is it's giving you some really specific thing. It's giving you surface. It's giving you VDBs. If you just do points from volume, all this is going to do, or all it should do really, is give you points kind of in here. We can obviously jitter this and get some, oh, jitter scale, not seed. So we can obviously have something sort of similar here. Now, the difference here is that we're getting a volumetric representation as well. Not only are we getting these unconnected points here, we're also getting a VDB named surface, which is really going to help us out when we're trying to, start the process of creating this. We want to kind of source this all in here. So we're getting a surface representation of our geometry. We're also getting our points here that are going to be seeded, because remember that a flip simulation has two components to it. There's the particle component. There's also the volumetric component, right? So what we're doing here is we're bringing in particles, but we're also moving back and forth kind of quickly between them being points and then being volumes, doing simulations on both of those and kind of going back and forth. Because if you look specifically in here, and this will kind of show you that, I'm going to turn off the surface visualization here. But if we turn off this and look at just our flip solver here, you can see we have particle motion. We also have volume motion, right? So both of those two different things are needed when you're working with flip. Not that you have to worry too much about that at the simulation level, but just know that part of the solver is happening on a particle level, part of it is happening on a volumetric level. So there's two different kind of sources for that. So yeah, just keeping that in mind, I think is an important thing, because you can do things with the particles, but you also will want to, you do also need to keep in mind that there's a volumetric component as well. So that was kind of what we were running into there, was that the particles were coming in, but the volumetric data was so kind of sparse that it was not allowing those particles to live on in those, in each of those voxels that they're getting kind of transferred into, and they were being lost kind of in that process. So that was what was happening before. All right, cool. So we've got that. So now what we need to do here is, let's just make sure, yep, I did add my viscosity here. That's important. And let's go into our flip solver. We'll turn our volume motion on here. We're going to enable our viscosity as well. We can turn on a couple of these things here, enable viscosity. And sure, we could do a slip-on collision. That sounds good. And let me see here. So this flip object should have some physical attributes, and we're going to want to turn our viscosity up here. So let's turn up to 100 for right now and just kind of see where that goes. Now we're going to have quite a bit more of a slow process here. Oh, you know what we can do too? A little tip that I like to kind of, now we're getting somewhere. One little tip that I like when I'm working with flip is that there's this really annoying thing where you'll be in here working on something, and as long as you're in the right spot, like here. So I'm like watching this and I'm like, oh, I want to kind of orbit around this. And you like go like this and you're like, wait, why am I moving like this? This is so weird. It's because it's actually seeing this box here. This is our volumetric box here, right? So this is where all our volumetric data lives with inside of. So if I wanted, that's actually lives on this flip solver. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hide the flip solver and hit escape here. And now this is going to let me actually orbit the way I would expect to. So it's not seeing this like kind of box as something that I can click on and orbit around, because that's what it was doing just a second ago there. So, okay. So we've got some, let's see, we've got some viscosity going on here. Let's see if it starts dripping off nicely. Yeah, cool. Okay. Let's give this maybe a little bit more of a slip on collision. This is basically just saying that our collision geometry should have a bit of slip to it, a little less, little less, what's the word? Friction as it's kind of, as we're sourcing and getting our fluid to move along, and we want to give it a little bit more the ability to slip versus being stuck and kind of not being able to move where these different where this collision is happening here, right? Yeah, no problem, Zach. Yeah, that thing always drives me nuts too. Like that is just such an obnoxious little thing, that box thing here, this bounding box. It's just so it's just so annoying to like I don't want to orbit around right here. But makes sense. It's in the viewport. So just notice what's going on here, that when we have the slip scale down at 1, you can see how slowly this is kind of flowing along the surface here. Really could do with quite a bit more movement. So if we do something like, I'll do something really crazy like 0.8, this is going to really flow now and kind of slip over the edge very easily. Now I think, oh, cool. Thanks, Eugene. Yeah, that was a lot of fun to get to chat with Mark. Super fun. So now here, you're going to see that we're yeah, for sure. 100%. There's ways to do that. You can, so there's two different things here that you could do, right? You could do, you can use a control field for slippage, right? So how rough this is, right? And how much it's actually going to like kind of fall off of this, how quickly it's going to, basically the roughness of this, you could say. So as your slip scale goes up, it's kind of almost like there's less friction and it's smoother. So you can change that slip scale. You can use a control field here. However, you do need to introduce a field here on your object. If we look at our flip object here, you would need to go in here and add a field. So you can see here we've got like source and surface and things like that. You'd need to add a field into this, and that can be, I kind of forget how to do that exactly. But flip is interesting. Yeah, I'm kind of forgetting that there's all these little bits and pieces in here. But so the slip on collision is one thing. So you can use a control field for that. Here is where you can do viscosity by attribute. And so this is an attribute that you can have live on the incoming geometry, right? So here you can have an attribute named viscosity and have that drive this flip or this fluid behavior. So just to notice here, if we go under our flip object in our geometry, here's all our points coming in, right? So these are our point geometry that we're working on, right? And right now you can see that it has a viscosity attribute of 1, right? So we could very easily set that attribute to be 0 or 100 or whatever. Right now it's at 1. So basically whatever I set in here is just going to be, is going to be multiplied by that, right? And that's more or less how that works. Now you can do some other mixing methods here. I believe the mix means how to blend it between, I forget exactly what the answer is here. How to blend the point attribute with the existing viscosity field, right? Because this viscosity attribute gets put into a field data, you can see here there's a viscosity field. That's again it moving back and forth between a particle and a volume, right? So it's taking particle data, moving it into a volume. So are we copying that? Are we multiplying it? Are we averaging it? How are we dealing with that? I think that can get a little bit much for me to try to do that on every frame or, constantly. I think we'll just do everything same viscosity basically. So, yeah. But I think the really interesting thing to kind of see here is that we can also control how far down this rock that this is going to drip off of by adjusting the slip scale. Because if it's slipping, it kind of actually wraps around the object really in a really interesting way. And that can happen with like this kind of thin sheet of liquid. Sometimes it can do some really weird stuff like that. So this is like a really high viscosity, like dripping thing coming off the bottom, which is really kind of interesting. So anyways, that's something we can sort of control. I don't think we're going to want to quite go that far. Maybe we'll do like, 0.5, something like this. And let's hit play here and see where that gets us to. So I think what I'm also going to do is give myself a little bit more thickness on this source area here. I want it to be a little thicker. So let's just peak this up a little more. We'll do it maybe something like that maybe. I just want to have a little bit more particles up there. So that's good. Let's do that. And then, oops, jumped out of that. I'm going to go in here. I just want to make sure there's a little bit more volume of this fluid as it's coming down. Don't want it to get too thin as it is dripping off basically. Yeah, that's doing some interesting stuff now. Cool, cool. Starting to do, I think, what we wanted to. Yeah, no problem. Here. There you go. There's the Discord server invite. You can go to houdinihangout.com and you'll find information there. Yeah, happy to answer any questions. Be able to hopefully answer your question there. All right. So now we're getting somewhere here. Let's actually try to turn the viscosity down a little bit. Just see what happens here. Might not need it quite so high. Ooh, another thing to keep in mind when you're working with flip and with viscosity and things like that. Actually, you know what I'm going to do too? I am going to bring this top rock down a little bit. Feels like it's a little high. So let's just do that. Because I don't think we need it up so high. We'll bring it down a little. Beauty of Houdini, obviously. You can just make that adjustment and we're still going to be in business here. One thing we're going to want to keep in mind as we're doing this is we have this volume motion velocity transfer. And basically this is the method for transferring the velocity from the particles to the, like it says here, to the underlying grid or the volumes that some of these calculations are being done on, and then back to the particles. So we have this splashy kernel, but what you actually want to do for viscosity is change this to swirly. This should actually work a little bit better, I think, for us. So if we have high viscosity sims, we want to change that to swirly. It's going to be a better solve overall. It's going to be a bit more stable and should do what we want a little bit better. Just a little tip there. I think it actually, when you do the viscosity, I think when you actually do the shelf tool, you get that. But yeah. All right, cool. One other thing we need to do here is we want to get a ground plane in here because obviously we're missing out on the ground plane here. So I just want to see what's happening here. Oh, let me turn my real-time toggle on just so we can see that. Yep. Okay. Might want to bring this rock underneath a little bit more as well because we're actually getting a bit more dripping off of this side than I was expecting. So why don't we do that too? I'll do that as well here. So let's go back up here. We'll grab our rocks and I'll just do this. We'll just do something like that. Cool. Okay. Ooh, I lowered it by accident. Did not mean to do that. maybe that's good. Okay. Anyways, cool. We've got this here. Now what we want to do is we're going to add a ground plane. So we can do this, just drop in a ground plane, and we'll just merge this in here. I just like to make this cleaner, so I'll put the ground plane over here and I'll just drag this up in the merge. So this merge is a collide relationship. That's what kind of relationship it's giving between these objects. It says left inputs affect right inputs. So that means that these are colliding with this, basically. You can do it mutual, but we don't need it to. We're just knowing that the left are colliding with the right. We should be all set. Now we have a ground plane in here, so that's looking nice. Cool. Let's just give this another little run here for a second. See where we get. Yeah, no problem, Zach. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the comments and questions, and yeah, enjoy the rest. Hopefully, we get a good result here. So yeah, so we're getting our fluid dripping down here. We're getting some random little tendrils and things like that. Might want to push this up just a little higher in the viscosity range. Maybe 75 will be better. I don't really want it to spread out too much. So the thicker we can make this, the goopier we can make it, hopefully the better. So we'll just boost that up a little bit. Cool, so we're getting somewhere here. Now, one thing I think I'm going to do is turn off the reseeding, because one thing that you'll notice is that reseeding basically means, that's interesting. This is new. Perform both guide reseeding and the volume density reseeding in a single pass for more efficiency. Oh, interesting. So what reseeding does is it allows you to make sure that the volume stays kind of constant. If there's areas where it gets a little bit thinner volumetrically, it can help add more particles there to make, or subtract to make sure that it's a more even volumetric representation of the fluid, basically. And so the problem with this can be that if you want to have something track along with a particle, that particle could die, your ID numbers can change, things like that. So what we want, I'm going to actually do this, add an ID attribute here, because as we go through here, some of these might go away. Now, it's hard to say that if they will or not. But, yep, I actually see some have gone away here. You can see we're now missing 5 is gone. 10 is gone. So some of these are missing now. So that is something we want to try to avoid, especially if we want things to be able to easily flow through these fluids, right? That's kind of our main goal here, is to have this all flow nicely, right? And come down, right? So, and have stuff attached to them. And obviously we want to attach it to our points, right? That's kind of the whole point of this, right? But, so what we would want to do is, let's turn off our reseeding. No, it's doing fine. My computer's doing all right. Actually, I don't even use OBS. I use a thing called Wirecast, but yeah, it's doing fine. Am I freaking out? Is anything wrong with it? Or is there anything wrong with my stream? Let me know if there is an issue, because I'd be curious to know. If there's any weirdness, let me know. Hopefully you just mean it seems like it's taking a while. I have a decent computer, so it can handle this. I actually want to get a second one, but that's not for right now. I have a Threadripper and a 3090, so I mean, I don't have a 4000 series graphics card, but it can handle it. So I'm very grateful to have had this computer for a few years now. All right. So if we look now these IDs are not going to be being removed. So we're keeping these IDs the whole way through now, which is really, really nice. It'll give us the opportunity to be able to make sure that as our particles are moving through this, we're not going to have random numbers of points changing. We're going to be able to keep all of our IDs solid throughout the entire simulation, right? I think we're just going to kind of live with this type of a simulation for right now. It's not perfect, but it's doing something, right? So we're going somewhere that's decent. So I think this will be okay. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'm too much of a perfectionist. I gotta get it just the way I want it to. All right, so if we go to volume motion, let's turn on some surface tension as well. I have a feeling that this will help. I don't know for sure, but let's take a look. I have a feeling that this is going to hopefully keep it a little bit more tendrily as it's coming down, hopefully, and give it a little bit more. Oh, you know what we can do too? I could add an invisible collider. No, that's doing way better. Perfect. So surface tension, if you don't remember, is going to be the like kind of the desire for the fluid to kind of hold itself together in a sphere, or in this case, kind of in tubes. But yeah. All right. So what we're going to do here, I think, is let's see. Might add kind of want to add like a little invisible collider right here. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Just going to add in a sphere here. So I'm not going to use this as like as the end result or anything like that, but let's just grab a little something here. Oh, you know what? I'm not going to add a sphere. I'm going to add a cone actually. Wait, oh, I can do a platonic actually. We'll be fine. I think we could do a tetrahedron. Sure, that's great. And let's just do it smaller. No, I want to do a cone, or a cylinder, sorry. I'll do a... Oh, this is this lab cylinder generator. Oops. Oh, well. This will work. We'll just make one of these guys, and we'll transform it up onto there. So what I'm going to do here is just give ourselves a little cone thing here, and we'll just... Yep, 0 scale is not going to work. Just going to give ourselves a little bit of a extra little collider here that we can have help us out. Just to divide this a little bit more. It's not going to do anything perfect, but it'll give us a little bit better, maybe a little better result. Do this, that. Cool. Yep. Nice. We'll see it in this here, but we can actually, yeah, we'll see it here. But in our final render, if we're going to look up here and look at our, let's see, flip. So if we look at it this way with our rocks, we obviously won't see it here in our final sim. Anyways, all right, let's come in here and we'll take a look at this. See if that splits it any better. Hopefully it will. Cool. All right. That's fine. That'll be a little bit nicer for our, maybe for our long-term goals here. Yep. Cool. It just helps separate it a little bit. It's almost starting to come back together anyways, but that's fine. No worries. That should be cool. All right, great. Cool. So we've got that flip fluid flowing. Lots of Fs. All right, there we go. There's all of our particles. We can see that our IDs are living on, which is great. We'll probably in the long run want to have, you'd want to have more particles than this so that you could just take some of them, but we are going to, we're just going to make it work how we have it here. So let's go in here actually and do this at like 1 maybe. We'll just let this sim for a second here. Cool. All right, let me just visualize this here too. Guide, surface. Yep, that's looking pretty good. In fact, what we could do is maybe even go a little bit higher density here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a file cache at the end of this here. And let's do this. So we're going to call this flip cache. Now, there is a nice little trick that you can kind of do here, and I'll show you that in a second, but I do want to get the full resolution, I think, cached, because I have a feeling that it might, that the lower res, there's a way to compress your flip cache. However, I have a feeling that in this case, I'll want to use the higher res one. So let's just do this. So this is going to be our flip cache. I'm just going to remove this and just have the base name be $OS. Base folder, we'll put this into flip/hip/sim version 1, time dependent cache. This is a simulation, and I'm going to say save to disk in background. So what this is going to do, just for those of you who maybe haven't used the file cache node, is this is actually going to take our simulation and run it on a separate instance of Houdini in the background. You'll want to be really careful if you're doing this, because if your computer's not very powerful, you could run into some real issues with this. But you can see here we're kind of chugging right along. In fact, that's going so well, I'm going to actually not use this because we could go even further with this. So let's get a bit more here. Let's see. All right, let's do this at like that, 0.6. All right, let's do this again. Save to disk and background. So this is going to, like I said, it's going to kick off a flip sim on a separate instance of Houdini in the background. It will use your RAM. It will use your CPU. It'll do a bunch of things. But if you have a decently multi-threaded computer, this is a great option because you can still work while this is doing this. Just be careful of your RAM. That's, I think, my number one thing I would recommend. So here we go. We've got all of our stuff simming here. In fact, you can see it jump down to the lower resolution right there. In fact, now it's past it, so that's cool. So the one thing that's going to be really nice about this is that we are going to... Oh, okay, enough of that. Yeah, didn't like that because I tried to jump back up to our DOP network. What I'm actually realizing right now is that I did this a really dumb way. And I tried to output this one way, but I really should do this another way. So I'm going to cancel this one more time, cancel the cook. So what I did is I told it to just output this object flip. But what it's not doing is it's not outputting the volume information, which I do want. So I'm going to cut this. I'm going to say DOP IO. I always forget. That's fun. DOP. Yeah. Oh, that's fun. It gave me a little file cache there, which would have been nice. So that's kind of a nice little thing. If you do DOP IO, you get a file cache as well. Very nice. Don't need it because I already had one. All right. So what we're going to do is we'll just say flip sim. So here, so we need to import the fields and everything from this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're just going to drag this up here, flip sim. The node we want to use in there is, sorry, let me make this a little bigger here. There it is, flip sim, and we want flip object 1. Accept. Cool. All right, so we can just grab a preset here and we can use flip fluid. And that's perfect. That's what we want. So now what we're getting, instead of just our unconnected points here, we're actually getting our volumes, which is exactly what we want. Now what I'm going to do is a VDB vector, or actually, sorry. I'm going to do a convert VDB. So I actually want this as a VDB. So we'll take this convert to VDB like this. What this is going to do is basically just change our Houdini volumes into VDBs. They'll be a bit more, efficient. So here we can see that we're getting some better, or some information coming through. So this is all good. Great. Just making sure we don't need to change anything here. Nope. Good. Okay. So then what we can do is we can do VDB vector from scalar. Okay. So basically what we're doing is we're just turning this velocity into a vector field now, instead of an X, Y, and Z here. So now we have our velocity field. Cool. All right. So now what I'm going to do is save this disk in the background again. This should actually do exactly what I was hoping it would do the first time. So So now we're going to start that up. Let's go back here. We should now have our volumes here. Yep. So there we go. Now you can see we have 129,000 points and 179,000 voxels. And that's what we actually want to see. We want to see both. Because here we just had points. It should be the exact same sim. Nothing should change. It's just making sure that we're outputting our volume information as well. So that is going, and that is going to be good for us. Cool. Yep. Looking good there. All right, cool. So what we're going to want to do here is we're going to need a way to be able to now copy these, copy to points some stuff, right? We want to copy some things into this, right? So the really nice thing now is we have that ID attribute that we added in. Really important to be able to have that ID attribute because without that, we won't be able to kind of track these particles all the way through our simulation. I mean, the point count should stay the same, but in this case, we can use that for, to our benefit in a bunch of different ways. So let's just see how we're going here. Everything's going good. And you can see how beneficial this is too, right? To be able to run this kind of in the background as we're, oh, that's funny. It's like doing some weird little, it's like folding on itself almost. It's like doing weird little folding things. That's okay. Might be a little too viscous, but that's all right. We'll live with it. Okay, cool. So let's take a look at this and see what we can get out of it. Let's do this. Let's do a split. And what I'm going to do is I think these last two, so what we'll do is we'll just do this based on the IDs. Another really nice thing is that the volumes are not going to have the same ID numbers here. You can see that these have negative numbers. So what we can do is we can just say group ID at, and we'll do this based on points because everything is going to be points. At ID greater than or equal to 0 is going to get split here. So now this split will now give us two different outputs here. We can use this to make sure that we're just working on our points in this case. So in this case, we only have points. We can just say BTS, and these are going to be our volumes. Now these are invisible. We're not seeing these, but mark my word, they are there. You can see we have our surface and velocity fields all going well. Oh, this is just about finished. Cool. So you can't see it, but it definitely, the data is there. It is still taking a second to cache back through it or load it in. And then here's our point information all coming down here. Oh, that's so funky. It's got like these weird little I guess I have my viscosity up a bit too high, but that's okay. Yeah, whatever. It'll do for right now. You can obviously play with these simulation details and like get it going. Could be that the surface tension is a little too high. That could be part of it too. It could be the surface tension is freaking it out. So who knows? But anyways, we've got something going on here. It's kind of interesting. Anyways, all right. So we've got our points, and we could. Let's see here. I think we can do a random delete here. Yep. Do this over points. And what we can do here is we can delete a certain percentage here. So let's just say we wanted to delete most of them. We could do something like 99% of them. We're just going to have these points remaining. Now we should have this be stable though still. So if we watch this through, we should see a nice stable point count. They're going to be added. We're going to watch them go down and drip to the bottom, but nothing is going to be jumping around, jittering, doing weird things like that, because we have that ID attribute that is going to kind of keep this solidly going, right? So let's go actually a step further here. Let's go all the way to the end and see how many this is. Yeah, it's still a lot. Let's really go crazy here. We'll do 99.9. It's 850 points. Cool. So let's do something like let's take a line. Let's just copy this, right? Because we wanted to do something like grass, right? So let's do a copy to points. And here is our line. And do we have a p-scale on these? Because that could be affecting this. We do have a p-scale. So let's do this. We'll do that, and we'll do an attribute delete. We're going to get rid of the p-scale because we don't want to scale this based on that. Actually, yeah, that's fine. Because I don't think we'll need that. Okay, so there is our points. And let's see what happens here. So we've got our points coming in. They're doing some funky stuff. Kind of interesting. Don't know exactly where they're getting their directionality from, but it's kind of interesting. I believe that their directionality is coming from, or has something to do with, their velocity, I believe. So if we look at this and look at our copy to points, yep, sure enough, we're going to see that even for these very tiny velocities here, we're seeing that we're getting a perpendicular, kind of a perpendicular orientation of these lines to our points, which is not what we want. We don't want them to be based on that, based on their velocity, right? That's certainly not what we would want. So what could we do here to make this work a little bit better? My thought is that we will use a gradient of our surface field in order to make this work a little bit better. So let's do this here. I think if I do primitive properties, I think I can make these visible. Let me just see. Surface. Let's do surface. And if I go to volumes, can I do this? Adjust visualization. I think that'll do. And then if I do ISO surface, there we go. Cool. All right. So we've got our ISO surface here now. Nice little thing to keep in mind, that these primitive properties will allow you to visualize these things. So it's really nice. So I think what we should do here is, well, first, I think what we could do is basically, I'm just trying to think of the best way to do this. So since these points could go kind of deep inside of these volumes, this might be a little bit of a funky process, but I think what we want to do is use the gradient of this surface field, basically the direction, pointing out towards the top. Get that gradient vector and use that in order to point our objects around. So let's try that and see if we can't do that, because we have this volume here. We'll kind of see what this does. It might not perfectly do it, and we might want to keep, we might have to do some other little trickery here, but I think it'll be worth checking out. The other thing that we could do too is control it that as its velocity increases, like when it's falling, we could have them point the other direction too. But all right, let's do this. Shorten these up a little bit so they're not sticking out so far. Maybe we'll do 0.25. Yeah, cool. Is this going to be a furry liquid? No. Oh, sorry. Let me pull back up the reference we were using. So this was the reference that someone had suggested on the Discord, and so they had grass kind of in this fluid as it was pouring around, which is kind of interesting. It's like a really, really interesting little simulation here. So that is the idea that we were kind of going for here, was something like that. Sorry, I guess we didn't talk about. I talked about that at the beginning, and then a bunch of people joined. So, anyways, so yeah. So let's try to make this work here. So what we can do is when we're using our copy to yeah, it is. It's really interesting. That's why I wanted to take a look at it. And in fact, if you look on here, let's see, topic suggestions. It was in our Discord, and the dot put it in there and was like, "Hey, this was also really cool." So I figured I wasn't going to try to do a panoply thing, because from, I don't know if you guys have seen that from Ant-Man and the Wasp, but Panoply did a whole bunch of like look development stuff for them. It's really cool. But I am not them, and I am not talented visually like that. So so I figure we'll maybe let them release that someday and talk about what they did. Anyways, but this, I was like, I think I could come up with this in a couple hours. Anyways, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a gradient of this, this field here that we're looking at. Oh yeah, that would be cool too. You attract the tip of the lines, yeah, based on something else. Yeah. For sure, you could do something like that. Yeah, where like the tops of them would like attract to something else, and they'd like point in a certain direction. Yeah, 100%. Let's do this first. Let's do a point vop. So we're gonna first try to put a attribute on this. So I'm gonna turn this off for a second. I'm also going to go back to not adjusting the visualization of that. So let's just mainly look at this. I'm going to turn off this, and yeah, that'll be fine for right now. So I'm going to put this volumetric information into the second input. So let's go inside of this VOP here. So we're going to do a volume sample vector. Excuse me. Volume sample vector. So we're going to be grabbing based on the primitive name and the second input. The primitive name is surface, and the position is going to be the current point position. Oh, actually, sorry, this is not this is a surface field, so this is not a vector. This is a volume, just a regular volume sample. Don't need a vector. My bad. So primitive name, second input. Because surface, if you haven't learned this yet, a VDB that is an SDF is basically saying what are the distances to the surface of whatever object it is that you're, in some cases, if you're doing a VDB from Polygon, it's whatever the distance is to the surface of that object. So the visualization you're seeing is actually the point at which those numbers cross the zero range. You can actually change that. That's what the ISO value is. You can change where the visualization happens on, but for the most part, by default, you will see where those attributes go from positive to negative, or vice versa, negative being inside of the fluid and positive being outside, if I remember correctly. But anyways, all right, so we've got our surface. We're looking at our primitive name, second input, cool, sample position at those points. And let's just do a bind export here, and we can just take a look at this, see what it's outputting, and then kind of go from there. So just do a test thing here. Okay. And like I said, it should be that these are mostly going to be inside, which seems to be correct. You can see that most of these have a negative value, but they go not too far. So that's cool. Some of them are positive, which means they're just above the surface of the quote unquote surface of the fluid, but probably those are these ones that are falling or something like that. So that's cool. So that's working for us. And then gradient. If we do a volume gradient here. Oh, that's what I wanted to do, volume gradient. So this is going to be a little bit different. So what we want to do is actually calculate the gradient. We're going to do the exact same thing that I just did because I messed that up. So we want to do the gradient of this surface, right? So what this is going to do is basically do a calculation on this instead, and it will actually output a gradient for us, which basically is like a direction. So let's do this. We have now a vector that's coming in for this, and I'm just going to call this gradient. And let's visualize that. Take a look at it. See what's going on there. So we have our gradient here. It wants to do that as a color representation. So let's just go down to our visualization thing here. I'm going to right click on that and just adjust this. So we're going to change this over to be a marker. We're going to do a vector. And now we have these pointing like so. Just gonna, nope, wrong one, length scale. So now what we're gonna see is that these are going to be pointing away from the surface here. And what we're gonna wanna do is probably blend those into some sort of a, some sort of what's the word? Kind of like an up vector, and have them kind of, be sort of blended towards that. So they're maybe a little bit away and have them blended up. But what we should see here now is that these positions will actually follow along with the surface of that fluid. So let's just move this here. We'll see that those are going to be like so. All right. So we've got our point positions that are doing that. Now, what we probably want to do is have them be able to be a bit more smooth. So that would be helpful. But the other thing too is we probably want to make sure these are all unit vectors, which just basically means they have a length of 1, they have a magnitude of 1. So what we can do is come in here and just say normalize. And that should be better. And if we look up here as well, we should see the same thing happening. Now the problem is we're getting some that are on the bottom of this fluid, which isn't great. And actually I hadn't thought about that they were going to be all throughout it. So that's kind of interesting. But that's okay. We can play around with this a little bit. So yeah, so as we do this, let's just turn this delete. Oh, no, that's too much. Let's turn this off and do like 95. Nope. Just want to see a larger representation of this so we can kind of get maybe a better sense of what's going on here. All right, I'm just trying to think of what we might want to do here. It's definitely interesting looking. Looks like a big caterpillar. Kind of wacky. But so what we could do here is we could set, let's do this. We'll do an attribute rename. So this would be our, how would I handle collision in this case? Yeah, no, that's a great point. I was actually thinking about that a little bit when I was, before I started the stream, and I was like, I wonder if you couldn't do some sort of like a simple vellum kind of collision-y thing. I hadn't really gotten there as far as actually working through this. The other thing too I'm starting to think about is like, would it make more sense to do this a slightly different way as well? So I have some thoughts about this, but yeah, collisions definitely will be a tricky thing to play around with. That's funny. All right, let's go back to something like that. So now you can see that this attribute's getting put on both of those, but that's okay. Let's do this attribute from, we're going to change this to from grad to up. Okay. That's going to be nice. So now we've got an up vector. Let's see if that's going to be relatively stable. Yeah, it's not too bad. These, the down particles are definitely funky, but we're getting somewhere. We're getting something. So another thing that I'm just going to kind of play around with as well here is that there is a way to compress your fluids in order to get a little bit of a different look here. So let's do this. Fluid compress. Now this has 3 ins and outs because it's made with the new flip fluid process in mind. But if we do this, what we'll see is that this actually does some really wacky stuff to it, but this will actually take all of our particles and it's going to do some particle separation and stuff, and limit some bandwidth and blah, blah, blah. Let me go up into here and grab our particle separation. Oh, I'm at frame 189. That's not great. Let's just copy that parameter. I want to match the particle separation here. So we'll do this, paste relative reference. And so what this is actually going to do is make a compressed version of this fluid. It's going to reduce our data quite a bit. And if we do a fluid if I can type, particle fluid surface. So that's right. I don't think we need it. Do we need all of these? Hello? Why is this mad at me? Oh. Okay, so I think what's happening here is it's not happy with me doing this vector stuff here first. So let's just try this here. Throw this up here. Yep, there we go. Now it's happy. So it wasn't happy with me doing this convert VDB thing before this, but that's okay. Let's take a look at this, and I can paste the relative reference in there. Cool. All right. So now we have this. But what we can actually see here is just we can do particles. And what this should do based on... So based on this cull bandwidth here, what we can do is we can actually just keep just our surface particles and not have to go all the way into the interior. Basically what we're doing is we're reducing the amount of information we need to store, right? We're just taking the particles that are just at the surface. So maybe something like that. And then bringing those through, you know what I mean? So in this case, we have this compressed fluid compress, and basically this is putting it into these voxels for us, and then we're able to visualize that after the fact. Now the difference here is that this is what it normally looks like with a bunch of particles in the inside of it. And then if we look at this down here, we basically have a shell of particles because we've turned the inside basically into a kind of compressed fluid surface in the interior. And so it knows that to use those points for the outside, and you can use ones, it'll use the volume for the inside. Anyways, I was thinking maybe this would be something that we could use that would be useful. The only problem is, in fact, I'm seeing it right now. The IDs aren't going to be stable. So here we have IDs that are changing kind of constantly, and that's going to be because not all of these particles are staying on the outside of this fluid. So that's interesting. So cool. All right, so that's not going to help us, but that is a nice little trick. It's a way to get a lower or a smaller cache size. I don't know how big this cache was that I just made, but let's see here. It's like 7 gigs. It's not that big actually, but anyways. So let us grab these. Now the interesting thing would be to smooth these values in time. I know that there is a... Yeah, the wire solver is definitely the older way of doing it. I would say that you would probably want to use you would use like a hair solver with vellum basically. That would be what I would do. However, so one thing that is possible here to do would be to use something like based on the proximity to the collision object, right? Because we have our colliders here, right? So obviously in relation to that, we're not seeing them go through to the underside, right? We're seeing them. Yeah, actually, that's kind of interesting. Almost wouldn't even need to worry about it in that case. Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion, Awkward. Yeah, based on the dot product and proximity of collision objects. Yeah, for sure. I think that would be probably the easiest way to do it would be to just kind of call it based on the collision proximity. I think that would be the easiest thing to do. So let's just do that. Let's just delete them based on if they're close to the collision object. So let's do this. Distance from geometry. this reference geometry. Can just do that. Just make some points here. That's Alt. If you're not familiar with how to make those little dots, Alt will do it. We'll just do distance from surface. Okay, so we've got a distance thing here, so let's do that. Let's do a, actually, okay. Just do a blast. We'll do, okay, I've got some presets here, but what I'm going to do is do, all right, so if it's less than a value, so we'll do this, we'll do distance. Got a slider here that we can work with. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. That looks good. Yeah, that's going to work. That's going to do what we want it to. So what this is doing basically, just to show you real quick, is that this is basically taking the attribute here and it's just making a little, it's basically making a string out of this here. So it's taking the attribute name, which is distance. So we're saying at distance, a middle clicking there to evaluate that is less than this value. We're going to delete it basically. So now if we look at this, and in fact, if we turn this off, you should see that we're mostly just getting the top ones. The only thing it's not getting rid of. Okay, so awkward, you're saying, but also probably needs to be calculated in a solver somehow, as the orientation relative to rocks will change when it goes from one object to another to keep that p-scale. Yeah, so what I'm doing there is just asking it to calculate the distance to the surface, basically. Now I also should put a grid in there as well. So let's do that, because we don't have our floor in there. So let's do that. There we go. And that should work. Yeah, Lucas. Yeah, it's cool. Lucas is saying to transfer the normals from the object to the points. Yeah, certainly could do that as well. We could use that to create the normals here. So what we could do is we could take our could use the geometry here that has, we'll do a normal on it. So what we could do that, oops. If we do this as points for our normals here, do we have, no, we don't have normals there. Great. And then we could do something just like an attribute transfer. We could, sorry, just grab this and this, transfer the normal. And now we'll see that these have normals here like this. So that sort of works, yeah, for sure. The only thing it does kind of really bizarrely is it's messing with the orientations as they kind of fall around there. So that's kind of weird. The ground isn't really getting them either because it's closer to the rocks, I believe, in that case. To the points on the rocks, so you'd have to up the grid here. Yeah, actually that works a lot better than I was thinking it was going to. I was figuring that was going to act really weird, but it actually works pretty well. Yeah, I mean, I would have thought that from the start, but I'm like, nah, it can't be that simple. But it is that simple almost. So yeah, sometimes I try to come up with the hardest way of doing something, and it isn't always smart. Now there is some really weird stuff here in the middle. You can see here that we've got some really strange orientation issues. Classic over engineering. Yeah, for sure. Classic. So if we did that, we don't want to use it as a normal. We'll change that. All right, let's grab some stuff here. So we'll do that. Yeah, we don't really even need to do that, do we? Nope. Classic over engineering. That's me. Now we are getting some weirdness in certain places, but for the most part, it's doing what you would expect it to. It's actually quite robust. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, some of the things you probably wouldn't want it to do is like have them all be so sharply like angled away from things. That you could definitely smooth out and things like that. But let's see here. Yeah, let's do like 98%. Nope. I want to bring it down to like a reasonable amount here. And let's give these lines a few more points, maybe like 6. Yeah, now I'm kind of curious to play around with this to see if we can get the vellum stuff to work. I might be going a little too crazy here, but we'll give it a shot. Because that's working okay. Let's do something like that. We don't want to go too crazy with it. And so what I'm going to do is, all right, let's see, we'll do vellum, configure hair. And each of these points, let's do this curve. Nope. Resample. Hey, Lucas, by the way, Mr. Crossfader, welcome to the stream. I see you jump in there. Welcome, welcome. All right, that should work. Give us a little curve view here. We'll also say group. And we'll do pins. So what we're going to do is create a pin group for these hairs to get stuck to, basically. So let's say at curve U equals 0. So we should have, where's our line here? Where'd it go? There it is. So let's see. Let's see if we have our pin groups here. So if we have points. I see. Points. That's what we want. There we go. So when we copy this, we can see the pins are just all those base points right there. Right there. Cool. All right, so we've got our vellum hair. I'm going to turn this off. we're going to say pin to animation. The pins, we're going to get pinned. I'm going to make the bend, I'm going to make it fairly high. Let's do like 100 question mark. And let's do a vellum solver. Oh, does it really? Oh, that is a nice one. Group expression over prims. Yep. So why is this angry at me? Oh, shoot. Yes. It has duplicate point IDs. Does not like that. Just clean that up. Get rid of the IDs. Don't need that. Get rid of the velocity. Get rid of viscosity. Get rid of anything that we don't particularly need here. Cool. All right. That should be much happier now. Yeah, so what he was saying was group expression. First point of primitive. That is nice. Look at that. That's a nice little one. First point of primitive. Let's see. Points. There we go. Look at that. That is nice. That's a nice little touch. It could be a little scary because it's got a expression here, but that's okay. It's nice too. Both options, multiple ways to do things in Houdini. If you like working with Vex, there you go. If you like a little curve view thing, that works too, but you can actually do this without the curve view, so that's kind of nice. You could do this in one node. So there you go. Nice. Thanks, Lucas. Okay, so we've got this. I don't know. Let's see what happens. This might totally freak out, but we'll give it a shot. Oh, right. I want to match to animation. Oh, right. Also, that's right. We'd need to like source in the new ones that come in. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's not as easy as I was thinking it would be. No, that won't be as easy as I was thinking it would be, unfortunately. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Let me just reset that to make sure it's not. Yeah. Well, that's not going to really work now, is it? Soft pins? Yeah, maybe. I think it just doesn't like that everything's constantly changing. I think that's the real problem, is that you want to be sourcing more in there and stuff like that. Which I wasn't really planning on doing this, but I was like, hey, why not? We got to this point and it's looking okay. But no, it's basically doing nothing. It just looks exactly the same as it did here. So no. Failure. That's all right. Was not planning on that anyways, so kind of an extra little bonus thing here, but have to source it in the solver. Yep, exactly. So that's that'll be not happening for tonight type of a thing. But yeah, I think we're starting to get there a little bit. Hopefully this is giving you an idea of maybe how this would work. One really interesting thing that what was his name? Shoot. That Simon said was that he had to deal with a bunch of like rotating quaternions in his in his setup. And my guess is that he's using that in this scenario right here, where these are kind of falling down and you're getting these really quick motions between, let's see, where was it? I think it was actually further in this somewhere here, that we were seeing it kind of flipping in direction and stuff like that. So I think that was what he was. Exactly. Yep. That's basically what he was saying, is you would build some sort of, either it would be based on, an attribute. You could build some sort of fall off that would go, in the Y direction, or based on, how it's falling. Another thing I was thinking too was that maybe you could possibly figure out, based on distance between, from the surface of an object, that you could have that interpolate between, two different orientations. Maybe as it's falling, you have like an up vector that it blends to, and then it blends back to the fallen angle when it gets down to the bottom, right? When it gets closer to an object. So as it gets closer, it kind of goes bloop, and it kind of goes bloop and falls into place. So maybe as it's coming down, it's like, it's a vertical thing. I don't know. There's a few different ways you could do it. But yeah, that's kind of, that I think would be certainly a way to look into it. But again, probably not a thing we're going to do this evening. But in fact, I think I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon, because we're going on 2 hours here, and I don't want to go too far. But yeah, Lucas, those are all, those I think would definitely be the methods for getting some finer control with this. But I think it's interesting. I mean, it's a cool idea. Hopefully this gives you kind of a sense for how you could do some of this stuff. Obviously you'd want to randomize these lines a bit, make them actually look like grass and blah, 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 things like that. Lucas says, I think I'd attempt to VDB the rocks, build a field with an SDF. Yeah, for sure. That would be a way you could do it. That would certainly be a way to do it for sure. The other thing you could do, though, is do the distance calculation like we were just doing there to the rocks, because really at the end of the day, those would be very similar solutions. I think from the actual math that would come out of it, because with an SDF, you're building a field to the surface of an object. I don't know if, you're building a field that contains the attributes and the distances to the surface. I don't know if there'd be any real difference there. Other than that, you'd have to put that data into a VDB and then bring it back out. So call it art direction and ship it. Exactly. Yep. But yeah, hopefully this is sort of interesting. I mean, I know it's not the finished render. We weren't going to get to a finished render tonight. That was obvious. But, we've got some interesting little fluid stuff going on here. We've got our, our little hairs kind of embedded into it. And, so we can certainly get little things going here and drips and stuff like that. I mean, hey, it's a couple hours worth of work, and we got something going, and hopefully that's relatively interesting to you. Let me see here. I'm just going to grab these both, and we'll just merge them like so. Obviously, you'd want to surface them as well, but you're getting somewhere here. We're getting somewhere. So yeah, I think that's where we'll end the stream for this evening. But thank you guys so much for hanging out and asking questions, and kind of getting into the nitty gritty of stuff. Hopefully you've learned a little something tonight, whether it's DOPS or copy into points or not over engineering things like I tend to do. Hopefully those are all good things for you to get out of this. So next week we'll have another stream. I think I'm going to do something similar. If you have suggestions for next week's stream, please drop them into the Discord server. There's a few other things in there that are sort of Vellum related, so I might maybe look at that, one of those, to kind of go back into something Vellumish. But if you guys have other suggestions, I'd be thrilled to take a look at them. And obviously any help or anything like that people need, please drop it in the chat there, and I or someone else, and there's been plenty of other people that have hopped in and answered questions. Somebody will be happy to take a look at that. So, yeah, but I think that's it for this evening. Unless anybody else has any other questions or thoughts or anything like that, I will sign off and leave you to it. Oh, no problem, Robin. Yeah. Multitasking. Yeah, no problem. If I'm just some background noise for you to work to, hey, that's great. No problem at all. Glad to have you around. So cool. Well, we will call it quits there for the evening. And then next week, man, I would hate to think that my voice has any right to be considered ASMR, but hey, if it does it for you, whatever. Yeah, so next week we'll try to do another little setup from scratch and kind of walk through it and talk about things, and sometimes we'll get to a good spot, sometimes we won't, but it's always fun to get to do these types of streams. So anyways, good night, everyone. Thank you for joining me, and I will talk to you all again soon. And keep an eye on the Discord and on social and things like that for updates on streams and things like that. But hopefully I'll see you all next Wednesday. Bye.